Hi, just wanted to drop a quick little video about something that came up in a conversation today I had with someone back in New Zealand who's been reading my blog for a while. And it was really interesting to have a conversation because he'd been reading right the way back through some of the articles that I'd written when I was at Better by Design, which is, I mean, some of that stuff would be pushing like 5, even 10 years old. And it was right back when I was working in the space of design and design thinking. So it was just after I'd left being a lawyer, so I was moving away from the venture capital and private equity space into working in management consulting. And I was really focusing on this movement at the time. It was centered around IDEO in San Francisco, and some really interesting designers coming out of the UK who were talking about using the mindset of a designer throughout the rest of the business. And that movement was really called design thinking. So it was taking the thinking processes of design and applying them to business processes, to the rest of the product, right the way up to engineering and the core, what we would these days call user interface design, user experience design, service design. None of those really existed back then, at least in the form that they do now with digital products. So it's hard to explain now, but it was a controversial thing to talk to business people and say, you guys should incorporate design and the approaches of product design into the core of the business and to really become more user-centered. At the time, that was not common in business. Apple was around and doing well, but they were pretty much the only example. And I guess what's funny now, looking back, is that if you talk to any business person, there's a good chance that they would agree with you that using the mindsets of design, so that's empathy for your customer, customer-centered thinking, creative, iterative approaches to prototyping, testing, feedback, rapid iteration, those are all common business practices now in large and small businesses. But it was very rewarding for me to be part of trying to advocate for that change. And a lot of my blog posts were about that. A lot of where I cut my teeth in terms of consulting and client services was on trying to bring about that change. So going to somewhere where there was something that was important but wasn't well respected and wasn't being adopted in the business community and advocating for that change. And so what was interesting is the next theme in terms of when I moved to the UK and got into working in more of the digital, social, PR, communication side of things, that was centered around the social media kind of explosion that happened, and this would be about 3, 4, maybe 5 years ago now, that social media in business was controversial. That you would get a lot of feedback from particularly enterprise, B2B technology companies saying social media is not relevant to the way that we sell and deliver our products. And that seems ridiculous to say now. I actually wrote an entire book about digital marketing for technology companies, particularly for enterprise and B2B companies. And some of the early readers of the book were like, oh no, there's no way that this stuff is relevant. We sell hardcore, back-end technology products. The internet, social media, digital, not relevant to the way that we sell our products and the relationships that we build. And it seems ridiculous to say it now. So much of the way that particularly large enterprise technology, but every product is bought, sold, the relationships behind them are built via digital channels. There may still be an incredibly kind of personal, high-touch element to how some of those transactions happen, but a lot of that is going to be, even those relationships are going to be occurring online. So again, I went to a trend, an area of business, something that was going to be important, but at the time was considered pretty marginal. And I guess part of what I did with both design thinking and with social media was to argue for the really hardcore business value of that type of empathy, creativity, or communication. So what's interesting is now I'm working in the equity crowdfunding space, so bringing venture capital and angel investing online. And that's really exciting, and I feel that's part of that mission. Equity crowdfunding is all about allowing companies to turn their fans and their customers into investors and actually bring them inside and give them a stake in the success of the business. And that's incredibly powerful, and I think there is a real issue around advocating for that. It's not widely respected. There are a lot of VCs and angel investors who are very cynical about the ability of the crowd or the public to make informed investment decisions. I think that's interesting. But what I've noticed recently, actually, and this is just in the last day or two, is there's actually still a real issue around arguing for the business value of marketing inside technology companies. And this seems ridiculous because the ROI of communication, persuasion, marketing should be so crystal clear to tech companies. But the growth hacking movement and the trend around like the marketing is the product and the product is the marketing, a lot of the stuff that I believe in, it's actually meant that we don't really acknowledge and respect the craft of marketing. And honestly, I am not a professionally trained marketer by background. I'm a business person who has picked up the skills and craft of marketing because it's been useful to solve business problems that are in front of me. But when I spend time with professional marketers who are steeped in that discipline and trained in it, I really notice that they don't always get the business respect from their colleagues that they should. And I think that's a real shame. So one of the things I'm going to be taking on in the next little month, and let's look forward to some more videos about this. We're going to have this as a two-way conversation. I'm going to drop some blog posts on the topic. But I'm really interested in reconnecting with how do we prove out the return on investment, the business value of marketing inside startups and technology businesses.